Hi, it's Dustin Lanier. Thanks for listening. Please find me on LinkedIn for original public sector operations content every week. And please reach out to me if I and my team of procurement professionals at Civic Initiatives can help you be a public procurement change agent. Today, we are doing a podcast recording on how do procurement shops attract and retain talent in the current environment. We previously did a podcast on both hot jobs and succession planning. So this kind of flows with it. I think it's an interesting topic, and I'm going to do some speaking on it in the fall. So I really wanted to get the thinking of a lot of the great minds on this panel. So in terms of procurement shops that attract and retain talent, I think it's really interesting that we're still dealing with shops that have been under a long and heavy workload because of COVID and few breaks. And then now with new funds coming and new demands, there's potentially a mobile job market that's going on. So I think it's interesting, and I'd love to get some thoughts from people on how procurement shops can be successful in this environment. So let's start with Jaime, who, as we said in the pre-recording phase, is now either the queen or El Presidente. She says she didn't accept queen, but I don't know. So she was recently elected with NASPO. So congrats, Jaime, and maybe talk a little bit about kind of what that means to you, and then talk about the topic if you would.
Awesome. Thank you, Dustin. And it's great to be back on Clubhouse. As Dustin mentioned, I was elected as the 2022 president-elect for NASPO. So I will serve in sort of that vice president capacity for 2022, supporting Delbert Singleton, who is the CPO for South Carolina. And then I will serve as the president in 2023. Right. I could go on and on and on for hours about NASPO and the incredible procurement community that organization continues to build from a local level all the way up through an international level. They are just incredible. I am honored to serve the procurement community and the organization as a whole. It means a tremendous amount to me to have that confidence from my colleagues. So super excited. One of the points that I wanted to mention around attracting, retaining, maintaining, supporting all things talent related, I had an opportunity to chat with some university partners of NASPO last week at our annual conference. And we started out the conversation with attracting, how do we get the students that are, maybe they're on a business path, maybe they're on an economics path, maybe they're on, I don't know, maybe they're in psychology. It could be any number of undergraduate courses. How do we get them to think about procurement? And so oftentimes we hear that folks have sort of fallen into procurement because it's kind of like the water cooler for careers, right? You just sort of drop in and it fits, and there's a legal component and there's an economics and a financial component. But how do we create a procurement path where folks want to seek out a procurement degree? So I think attracting talent, to your point, Dustin, right? We need to be super flexible in light of COVID. Folks want to work at home. They want to work remote. They want to be able to throw a load of laundry in at 10:15 in the morning in between phone calls. But more than that, once you have that investment and you bring the talent on, the question then becomes retaining. And I think that's a matter of creating innovation, offering the ability to be creative. I've seen a number of employers that say, one Friday a month, no meetings, right? You have a creative day, or 2 mornings a week for a couple of hours. Turn your email off, do work. How much time do we spend in our day not doing work, just focusing on email? So I'll just start with those couple of points that I think we need to start thinking about the workforce in more of an innovative way that serves our employees just as much as it serves our customer.
So you bring up the education and trying to grow some of the interest of next generation in public procurement. We have our higher ed representative here with Justin. Justin, do you guys try to do much to involve students in any way from an attracting in this direction? And then overall for your practice, how are you trying to think about both getting them to come and getting them to stay?
Yeah, so these topics are really on top of mind for us right now. On the recruiting side and with our students, I think if you look around our campuses, most of our campus procurement organizations actually have students who are working in our organization doing projects and bringing to bear, I think, a lot of the strengths that they have as individuals and the things that they're focusing on as they develop into what they're going to be in their careers. So we're able to target and get access to new skill sets and ways of thinking in areas like analytics and communications, in some of these areas where people are really creating new types of disciplines and analytics and just ways of communicating with each other in a very networked way rather than being very hierarchical. I think the other thing that we see when we see interest from students in participating with us is a recognition of the procurement process as a leverage point for a lot of the things that they care about. So first and foremost, sustainability. It seems like every time I have an engagement with students, we follow a path, and that path leads to their interest over the long term in building a career that's related to sustainability and building both a planet and an economy that's more sustainable for more people in the long term. Similarly, a lot of thought going in right now to the role that college campuses play as anchors in their communities and their engagement with small and diverse businesses and their important role they play in really shaping and promoting their local economies. So that's something that's definitely on top of mind for students, and something I think that when you're talking to them about that, they see the opportunity in the procurement process to have a lot of influence there.
How about the kind of jobs that we are posting, either maybe Christin or James as folks who deal at a poly sub level? I mean, what kind of positions are you able to actually be filling? And do you find that it helps to make people be interested in the profession? Like, how have you tried to balance between maybe the grind and then the other parts of the job?
Good day, everyone. James Crenshaw, DC Government. One of the things that's important to me and to the team that I work with is continuous improvement and learning. And one of the things that we talk about is why we do what we do. We want to be more than contract signers. We want to talk about strategy, the importance of efficiencies. And what we found is when we do things like send our team members to conferences for development, sign them up for professional organizations, they feel like we are truly investing in them. And when we ask, what are your thoughts on this decision? Even if we know what we have to do and why we have to do it, but we ask the thoughts to our contract specialists, what are your thoughts on these? It makes them feel like they're more than just filling in blanks and just pushing paper, but they're actually contributing to the team. And what we've been told is that is what keeps them there. My office, our average tenure right now is right at 8 years in our office. I'm actually the second newest person in this particular office at 3 years at this office, but overall over 10 years of experience. But that's a great sign for our office, because where I came from, people were coming and going a lot. So those are the things that are important to us in our office. And as it relates to the positions, like contract specialist, yes, you are that, but we want you to do more. We want to really learn and be able to work with you and not just assign you work.
Christin, how about for you guys? How are you trying to create work that attracts into the kind of jobs that you have?
In general, I think it's important that I ensure that they're getting a comprehensive view of what procurement looks like, what it is. I think it's easy for us to have our heads in the sand a lot of times, just doing our particular task, and maybe not even seeing the outcome of the project. And what happens once we pass it on. So I think it's important to look at the bigger picture of our impact. And so just with my internal team, that is what I do to make sure that is, made a point for them to try to really get a big picture of what's happening before it makes it to them, the request, and what happens afterwards, to really help boost and help them understand the value, to create that value buy-in. As far as like attraction, I am actually just on my first replacement of a position, but I think what's going to be really critical is how I shape the job description to make it reflect exactly what it is we do. In a comprehensive way, in an impactful way. And then obviously in the interview, I think it's important to really spell out what's involved. I will say I really like what Jaime mentioned. I have kind of just been hovering over an idea of trying to engage high school and or college level programming with our agency to maybe bring in interns or go into their spaces to really help build an interest into procurement and into the field a little bit more deeply outside of the other areas of supply chain, because I do think that supply chain is growing and there are students that are attracted to that field. But I think when we drill down into procurement, we've still got some more work to do. And so I think getting it at that level definitely heightens the awareness and allows them to make some more comprehensive decisions. So that's all I have on it. And thanks, Jaime, for pointing out the educational piece that needed in the awareness.
Just a quick follow-up. I wanted to ask folks if anybody has had the opportunity to ask your staff who they are, what they're passionate about, right? Because so often we bring them on as an employee, we go based on a paper and a 30-minute interview, and then we work with them for 8 years, 10 years, 35 years. One of the things that we've done in the state of Maine, we ask everybody as soon as they come on board to fill out a Clifton strength finder, right? And so it's if you're not familiar with it, it's a test, right? It checks to see what your strengths are. So we just brought on a new RFP manager, and it was super interesting to see his top 5 strengths, right? He's an achiever, he's strategic, he's an arranger, he's analytical, he's a relator, right? So all those 5 skills are super important in that particular position. I don't remember what mine were because I took them so long ago. One of them was harmony. So if you can believe it, I love to have harmony. I don't like conflict, which I just blows my mind away. But I guess I'm just curious, and I'll put that back to the group. How often do we have that conversation to really get to know our employees and what their strengths are?
I like that. I haven't done the formal component with my team. I've been a part of it, and I agree, Jaime, those particular personality or leadership type skill or just those assessments I think are really effective. And when you put a matrix together and kind of see how your team jives, and even just knowing at an individual level what each person is driven by is really good and effective. Just on an every day-to-day basis, something I do a little bit more informally, I have regular check-ins. I like to call them temperature checks. And those temperature checks really are for the team member to be able to come in and talk about what's going on with them. And it does not have to be work-related. It's also an opportunity for me to understand if any of their goals have changed at the time. If there's something I can do to help be resourceful to them. So I do what I like to call temperature checks just so I can know where they are. Because not all the time will you have, say, an assertive team member that's going to come to you. And so just definitely making sure I'm showing my engagement and genuine interest in their development. And even again, if it's not related to procurement, how can I be of assistance to really bring in that human component that a lot of us look for, whether we realize it or not. And it actually impacts us wanting to be at the job we're on. So great point with that, Jaime.
I'd like to chime in quickly. We're talking about the temperature checks. Last time we spoke, I mentioned that I was working on a project to put in some junior contracting officer training for specialists who obviously would like to be contracting officers. And what I found was, or what we found was, is everyone doesn't necessarily want to be a contracting officer and lead people, but they do want to learn what contracting officers do, how the decisions are made. They would like to shadow contracting officers in meetings. And what we found was these are things that also make them want to stay within our department, make them feel valued, help them feel like we are still pouring into them and helping them learn about what they do and why we do it. So definitely those temperature checks, because I just had an assumption that, everybody wanted to just keep going and lead people and things of this nature. But some people just want to learn and stay in their role. And that's okay too. And we should embrace that as well.
Jenny, we haven't had a chance to come to you yet, so I'll just give you the free use of the talking stick on anything that you have found interesting or worth comment on so far in terms of attracting and retaining talent. And then I'll pose a general question out to whoever wants to pick it up.
Thank you. No, everybody is saying everything that I would say. I think it's so important that we're not looking, especially in government, as these type of procurement positions being just a transactional type of work. It really has such a huge human element. And I think especially during the pandemic, so many of the procurement and contract staff were really challenged to think outside of the box and really address their needs in government. And I think so many people just did an amazing job. So I think really looking at the human element, encouraging people. And as James said, they don't have to be leaders of people, but they can be leaders of the process. And they really are strategists. So I think changing the narrative that they're just contract people or they're just procurement people, I think is happening because so many people are relying on their skills now to just get their basic job done. So I think building the human element, even if you don't go to school for it, I think the people in the contracting and procurement unit are similar to in the CFO and the fiscal offices really know their organization from top to bottom and have a huge view on how the organization lives and breathes. So I think empowering people in these different jobs and encouraging their growth is really imperative.
So obviously in procurement, there's going to be a lot of transactions that have to happen, of course, right? It's a core part of the purchasing function. But depending on how the executives have designed the organization to, for example, have master contracts that allow for task order purchasing or automating certain functions or assessing certain processes to make sure that we're not taking an inefficient process and putting it on our team, leaders have a potential to, by the way they manage their organization, have influence on the kind of positions that they actually have to post. So I'm interested in what you guys think as far as what is the responsibility of the procurement officer to manage what the work is so that the work that we're able to present to people as jobs is interesting enough to compel them to think about it as a career. Like, what is the responsibility of the procurement leader to make sure that you're able to actually design jobs that will attract people into the profession?
Well, if we don't do it, Dustin, who will? Right? We're the people that think procurement is amazing. It is the backbone of all things to get anything done. So I think it is 200% on the CPO and or other procurement leaders to lead that effort.
Yeah, I think that JV's spot on, right? Like we have a responsibility to our organizations to advance what we think the best and highest use of our procurement resources are and shape what is the work that we're going to perform, how are we going to connect to the organization, what are the programs that we're going to advance, and what is the value that we're going to deliver. And if we're focused on that and we're kind of following where the economy, where technology, where our organizations are taking us, that will lead us naturally to create these new and different types of roles that become attractors. And then to the part of the conversation that has been really kind of understanding what our current staff wants to accomplish and where they want to go and the skills that they want to develop, help bring them into that world as well too, so that they're able to continue to make the kinds of contributions that they're interested in making.
I was going to say, I do feel that, Christina, Semeraro, Civic Initiatives, I do feel that procurement directors need to get over certain fears as far as when it comes to building their team and building the skill sets. And I would say delegating is key. So not blind delegation, but leading through modeling and allowing that person to slowly take the reins until they've taken over that function and maybe even added some of their own touches to whatever that function is. And this practice allows people to take ownership, and it fosters that investment in the shop and in the organization. It builds trust not only between the person who kind of bestowed it upon you or bestowed that task upon you, but within the group and within the team. They can start to be a leader in that area or in that role and begin to teach others the ropes or potentially hand the reins off. So I think a lot of it, from what I've observed in being in a couple of shops, is the idea of being able to create leaders that are over certain functions and teaching them the way that you would want to do it or that you want to see it done, but also allowing them to have their own personal touches and allowing that, investment to take hold.
This is Jenny. I think what Christina is saying is so important. But a lot of contract and procurement staff can do really, really well, and it does take them time to grow in this role. It's really to ask the right questions and to talk to everybody in the organization. So one thing is having your procurement staff talk to legal staff and talk to IT staff and talk to the different staff in the organization so that you're really forecasting potential risks and potential speed bumps in the process and not missing something. So having these conversations really early in the process instead of somebody making a whole plan and then coming to the contract and procurement staff and asking them to implement it, and then it doesn't make sense or they haven't considered everything. So I think building this ability to have these two-way communications are really vital for the success of the procurement staff in kind of meeting what the expectations are of leadership.
So I do a speech on strategic procurement, and I'll actually be doing some speaking on its go time around attracting and retaining talent at a couple events in the fall, where one of the assessments we did, we were told multiple times that a particular person was a young person. They wanted to be interested in procurement. But then when you actually look at the work that the person was doing, it was not necessarily work that was going to attract and retain a young person to continue to view this as a career. And I think that's one of the important things is how do we take people who maybe are starting a career or mid-career in a different profession like logistics or private sector contracting and make them view the job in government as the opportunity to really make change in government. If you like change in government, you should be attracted to procurement because you can never make more change than when you have money in one hand and requirements in the other. If you're given a job where you can use your brain to help drive the work. And that's what's going to get people to think about this as a career and not just something that they fell into. So that's a particular passion of mine.
So I'm just going to ask the question. How do we do more with less? We all have more work to do as a result of COVID. We have ARPA money that we're trying to spend. All of that flows through procurement, and our staff are feeling burnt out, right? We're almost 2 years into this thing, and it seems like there should be an end in sight. So I'm curious if we've given any thought to how do we attract that talent, retain the talent in sort of a strained workforce environment?
Jamie, that is a great question because where a lot of the conversation begins today is really with how do you retain that staff? Like you said, they have been through a long 18-month period that at first we thought was going to be a sprint, then we thought it was going to be a marathon, and now it's starting to feel for people like it's a new way of life. And when you look at people who have the opportunity to retire right now, a lot of them are taking it. A lot of people feel the pressure and the kind of the scars of the experience. And so we've been spending a lot of time thinking about within our team, how do we give them the room to support their families and support themselves? How do we continue to create opportunities for our staff to connect with each other in a way where they're not seeing each other in an office every day, but know that they have a team that's supporting them as they kind of continue to kind of go and deal with supply chain disruptions in food or MRO or whatever categories that we face every day. You know, when you began in your opening comments, promote an environment where they have the flexibility to live their personal lives at the same time they make these extraordinary efforts on behalf of our campuses. What I see in our team is that their commitment to our core mission of teaching, research, and public service is incredibly strong, but you can only work tired for so long, and you've got to really create these opportunities for them to rejuvenate and think about their careers. And, you know, what we try to make sure is that they understand that they have that support so that they're not tempted to look at the scars and the burden that they have and say, I want to go do this somewhere else. I need to remove myself from this environment.
I think that one of the major challenges as well as it relates to attracting great talent is salary. When I graduated from college, the entry level position, I started off in supply chain logistics. The entry level position when I graduated college in 2005, salary was higher than the entry level position in contracting in 2014 when I started in contracting. And so I remember when I was in college and companies would come to our job fairs, one of the things that majority of us was looking at was not only the opportunity for advancement, but okay, what am I going to be possibly making when I graduate college? And so we can look at ways, I know, depending on your municipality, council, and all different things determine what you can pay. But we need to look at ways to attract retention or talent with salary as well.
So as we come into our last third of our conversation today, let's talk about retaining people. So I posted a little document on LinkedIn a couple days ago where I'd read a Harvard Business Review article about how people make decisions on what they are thinking about in their job. There are people who stay in jobs even if they would otherwise want to change, like the people who maybe their environmental pressures don't allow them to change. But having people who don't want to be somewhere but they can't change only potentially creates a toxic opportunity inside of your shop. So hopefully we can design things so that people want to stay at a job and that they are able to really have that good, positive environment that keeps them as the demands on the procurement shop raise and then some of the new funding comes in. There will be job mobility of some procurement professionals, especially when we don't necessarily expect people to be in the office all the time. Or perhaps we change our requirements and say people do have to be in the office all the time. And somebody says, well, I don't want to do that and I don't have to because I can get this other job. So I think there will be an interesting job market for procurement professionals in the next year. So how do we really think about what makes people want to stay? And I put forward 7 or 8 concepts around that they feel that their work matters, that they make individual contributions, that the people that they work with, that they value, that the work environment is special, that work-life balance and mental health is important, and it's not a constant burnout factory. And I listed a whole bunch of things that I thought were compelling. So we've talked about how we attract. So from a retain perspective, how do we make sure that our environment is at its most likely to make somebody want to stay, even if somebody comes and tries to pull them, or we make a change that would make that person otherwise want to walk out the door?
Well, it's certainly not salary, right? Public sector does not get paid as much as private sector. There are some benefits, of course, being in the public sector. It does feel like we're there for a greater purpose, and that's fine. Although I will say by Friday afternoon, that's not what keeps me wanting to sit at my computer and push through those last couple of meetings, although I wish it would. There was a recent post on LinkedIn that went viral, and the manager said, I do care that your child is sick. I don't care that you need 2 hours off in the afternoon to go to the pediatrician. I do care that your basement is flooded and you have a plumber coming over to fix it. I don't care that you have to step off my meeting to go let the plumber in, right? And those are just 2 examples of management investing sort of their heart and their feelings into their employees. Employees will stay if they feel valued. I mean, unless there's some other circumstances, but one of the driving factors in having an employee stay and be dedicated to their job is having management invest in them and their life. So I tell all of my staff, you have maximum flexibility. You have done amazing over the past almost 2 years. I thank them individually when they're least expecting it and not as a group. I don't send the blanket email saying, hey, thanks everybody for all your work. That doesn't feel genuine. But once or twice a week, I try to send, a thank you note to most folks just saying, hey, thanks for that really descriptive email. It enabled me to make a great decision. And I think at the end of the day, they feel valued. They feel like I support them in their job and I support them in the flexibility in their life. And that's super important.
Yeah, and this is Jenny. I can't agree more, Jamie, on that. I think that, the pandemic, at least for our office, I think we found a lot of people who were empowered to do their jobs in a completely different way. And their management was really supportive of that. So they were not in the office environment where sometimes individual voices can get muted with the kind of chaos of running a government office. And I think that if you are really allowing flexibility and you are allowing people to do their job when they can, amidst their own internal and personal chaos, it's amazing how much they are more effective, more willing to take on new projects, and more willing to collaborate. So we've seen just a huge increase in productivity, not from a time standpoint, but a quality standpoint with that flexibility. And our office is only going to be coming back not full-time in the office. And that was really to address the staff really wanting to have more flexibility and not commuting. And that was really well received by the staff in our office. So I think that management really heard what employees were saying. And I think that's a huge plus for us retaining our staff.
I think it's important that we all remember that the staffs that we have working for us, they're making the decision to invest their career in our organization. And that really creates a responsibility for us to really know them and know what they want to do with their career and how they want to grow, what skills they want to acquire, what kinds of opportunities that we want to have, and try to never forget that, they're, as much as we're employing them to do a job, they're choosing to spend the time, that they have in their careers with us. And so, one of the commitments that I try to make to the people on our team is that whatever it is you want to accomplish in your career, we're going to do our best to help you do that. We hope that that's going to be an opportunity that's within our team or within the University of California in general. But even if that opportunity is ultimately outside of UC, we're going to try to help you accomplish those goals that you have and acquire those skills that you need. And when people feel that level of commitment, they'll return that commitment back to you. So I think we're able to attract a lot of people into our organization because of the mission that we have and the public good that we serve. But I think we're able to retain them because we're able to build that relationship with them and continue to help them grow and support their growth.
That was really well said. And as a small business owner that serves in a public procurement, I feel a great honor for people who work for me. And exactly to your point, their commitment of their life and their career into the common mission. And it is a great privilege. And I think that if leaders think about the fact that people are investing their time and their energy into your mission and what an awesome responsibility that is, I think that will come through in how you treat people and how you work with people. And then that will be part of the driver for people deciding to continue to not only show up, but to want to show up. Hi, it's Dustin Lanier. Thanks for listening. Please find me on LinkedIn for original public sector operations content every week. And please reach out to me if I and my team of procurement professionals at Civic Initiatives can help you be a public procurement change agent.